Yeah, I know what you're saying. All right, well, let's go ahead and call this, I guess we got a budget work session we're going at 5 o'clock here, so we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order if we want to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, let me just get back to square here. All right, doing roll call, we have all council members present. We don't have any, do we have any public comment? Hearing no public comment, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilman Lundin and a second from Councilman Merrill. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to F1. Mike, if you want to take it away.
All right.
All right, so. All right, so this is our third work session, and this one we don't have like a set formal schedule, like, or agenda like we did the first two. Operating, the first one, capital, the second one. The last one, we kind of ran out of time. And a heads up, we're doing this at 5 because by 5:45, I need to be out the door, or I'll have a very disappointed 9-year-old.
Yeah.
He's got his first hockey practice, and I'm head coach, so.
Well, you better be there. And you
yeah.
better be on time. So I think your kind of goal was to cover the water situation and then move on to kind of some suggestions from us, right?
Yes, after that, it's just, but I just want, this is kind of a big deal. Remember, I did not update 602 capital plan, right? And the reason that I didn't update that is that we're waiting on a well study. Until we get the well study, we really don't have firm idea on what these numbers might be. We're hoping that well study is going to be sometime in September here. So, but it's going to be after we do preliminary levy, not that for the preliminary levy, that doesn't really have anything to do with utilities, right? There's no tax dollars involved there. But just so you know, we'd go through that preliminary budget, and we won't know this kind of stuff yet. So the big thing here is understand. Oops. Scroll down a little bit. There we go. The big thing to take away here is that last time we updated, understand, the entire capital improvement plan is a very big workbook. It took 2 years to put together the original first draft, so I don't physically have the time to be able to go through and update the entire thing wholesale, start to finish, every year. So basically, you break it down into 5-year increments. The last time we did water was 2018. The numbers have changed a lot in 5 years. And I just want to make sure that we're on board, everybody understands and that we're clear about, there are almost well, not everything. The well 4 and the tower that are on this list on the screen were in the prior plan, but they were farther back. They've now moved forward in time quite a bit, and the other things are added. Now, also make sure that you understand, this list goes out a long ways, right? We were one of 2 cities that I know that does a 20-year plan. I'm looking out 40 years, but even some of the items on this are beyond that, right? So keep that in mind. The other thing to understand on this is it's going to matter a great deal what average use is per resident.
Mike, if I could stop you real quick there. So you're saying that you're moving those forward, and on this chart that you have there, you've moved those forward already, right? And
Well,
based
this
on width of-
is the chart from Bolton Mink. This isn't the format that I would normally use, right?
Okay.
I'm the Excel guy. You're going to see that giant list,
Right.
right out 20 years to the side. But right now, this is sort of the best guess, without
So-
having a well study and understanding what those costs might be.
Okay, but I'm just wondering, so I mean, when we're looking at without conservation, you've already moved those up compared to what they would have been otherwise.
Yes, as
So
you see
where
them on
where
here.
were they, where did we have
We
them?
were, probably add about 15 years
Okay.
to those numbers.
For without and for with?
On the, compared to the without conservation. So on the left-hand column, how it had been, just, ballpark about 15 years out farther than that.
Okay, so what we're looking at right now is what you've,
And this is,
you've moved everything forward
this-
roughly 15 years.
this chart is from Bolton and Mink, and Bolton and Mink, what's his name? Our water guy, Brian Golden. He wasn't looking at my capital plan when he put this together. He's identifying the big stuff, right? I'm going through doing all the gate valves, all the other smaller stuff that we care about, but is not as germane to the work that Brian and Bolton Mink do. So he's just saying, all right, based on where we've been using, what water we've been using and the population change we've had in the last 5 years, this is the best guess of where we gotta be. So, and just understand, those years, if you look at that closely, those years move a lot based on what kind of use we have per person. And having seen bills here and now very, very up close here the last couple weeks, irrigation is huge. Lots of people calling saying, my bill can't possibly be 80,000 gallons for the month. And it's like, no, I can see you've been irrigating every day, sometimes twice a day. The people that, if we convince people, hey, maybe every other day is okay, that's actually better for your lawn anyway, the roots grow a little deeper, we can make that a reasonable case and bring some of those daily consumption averages down, we can save a lot of money. Being able to have those go out in time gives us a lot more time to save that money.
Is there any regulations that we can put in place, like if they're over 20,000 gallons a month, we can charge them a higher rate?
Yeah, so,
Affect their pocketbook instead of their usage?
yeah, so we already have tiered rates, but the tiered rates are, you gotta, if I remember it, you gotta use quite a bit. And the difference between the tiers isn't real substantial. So what you would see is if we were in New Mexico or Arizona, they wouldn't have 3 tiers. I think we just have 3. They wouldn't have 3. They'd have 17. And that line, that first 1,000 gallons a month or 2,000 gallons a month would be pretty cheap, and it would go really steep, really, really quick. And if you wanted to fill a swimming pool in Arizona, you better have some bank. They are going to charge you through the nose. And so we could move toward that and just say, hey, you want to use water, that's fine, but you're going to pay for it, and if you don't, then you pay less. That is generally how cities that are really water restricted, like the Southwest United States, that's generally how they would handle that. They wouldn't actually say you can't anything, but if you want to use a lot of water, they're going to make you pay through the nose.
You might got a family of 5 versus a family of 2. Obviously, they're gonna use more water, regardless if they're watering their lawn or not.
Yeah, but a lot of what I'm talking about here isn't the difference between, I might have an elderly couple that only uses maybe 900 gallons a month. And a family that might use, with a bunch of kids washing a lot of clothes, that kind of stuff, they might get to 3,500. We're talking about the people that are irrigating every day, sometimes twice a day, that are hitting 60, 70, 80, or in some of the residents are over 100,000 gallons in a month. So that's the line you want to hit. I don't think you need to get people to use less. I don't think you need to have the tiers be so low that, the retired couple with 900 gallons should notice. That's a reasonable amount. They should be
I
able
want to
to.
interrupt you for a second. I don't remember if you remember this, Mayor. I brought up a while back, most rain sensors for irrigation don't work.
Yeah, you mentioned that, yeah.
And there was an app that I brought up a while back that it's a Wi-Fi connection for the irrigation. So if your weather, which most everybody uses the local weather on, like my furnace has it goes by the local weather. It's not what it's actually there, but it goes by someplace in Cambridge. And I think that was at a cost of like $50 a piece. And it would, if it was going to rain, the irrigation wouldn't come on. Because I'm gonna guarantee you, I drove by 20 houses Monday on my way into work, and it's raining out, and everybody's irrigation is going.
They have, like, my rain sensor is adjustable.
Yeah.
So if I had more than a quarter inch of rain, the irrigation would shut off, but it would be running. until it hits quarter
Yeah,
inch.
but
Then
I
the
think
irrigation
but
turns
at
on.
that point, Monday
So a lot, and
morning,
depend on how they have theirs set, they will run while it's raining. It doesn't detect a
but
raindrop and completely shut off.
it does help. But I've even seen it when we've been in downpours where we got more than a quarter inch and they're running. They don't sense very well. But
Right.
that was the whole object of addressing that. It would help them conserve their water also.
So our goal here tonight is to decide where you want to put these line items, or?
No, this is informational, because
Okay.
until we get the well study, we won't really know what is gonna be, what do we expect the reasonable cost to actually be for well 4, well 5. We won't know those things until we know where are the eligible areas.
So
The
why are
closer
we-
they are to, our water tower, our current water treatment plant, the cheaper it is. The farther away they are, the more it is. And running pipe, 1 mile or 3 miles, it's spendy. It's
Sure.
spendy.
Well, we're having the study done. We should wait till after the study is
Yep,
done, and then
and-
we should really tackle this for the
And-
future.
And
because
we
this is a
definitely will,
long-
because this is also our scheduled year. I would normally be doing a rate study right now normally. We'll do it on a 3-year cycle, but until we have more information, we should just not. We should wait until we have this well study, figure out where these items gotta be, have a reasonable plan, and then it's gonna be about, when we go into the rate study, it's gonna be about what rates the council is choosing is going to inform how much money we have and what we might expect consumption to be, right? Again, if we make that go tiered and do it real steep, people who are using a modest amount, 3,500 or less, yeah, that's reasonable. But for the people that are using 100,000 plus, and there are residents using 100,000 plus in a single month, it probably needs to be a little more spendy. It probably needs to hurt a little bit more, because that's a lot of water to put on a lawn.
Mr. Sylvester, how has that been since we put those signs out?
It has helped. It has helped. We were down like 100,000 gallons, from 1.6 we averaged. I think we were down to like 1.5 for the month. It's down now again now, but we've got some rain lately, so that's helping with that matter as well.
Yep. So we'll definitely be addressing this. We're gonna first get the well study. That'll inform where these things should go and what the correct prices are, and then based on that, we'll go through the rate study, and based on what we decide on that tiered structure, whether it's simply the same as we have or steeper than what we've had, that'll give us a better indication as to how far these things can be farther out.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of pieces to this puzzle to
yeah,
to
and
talk about and decide what to do.
And that's also, to set the expectation correctly here, is normally I would be doing the rate study now, we'd be talking about it now, and probably coming to like a final in October or November, a final decision, and then those rates are going to effect for bills that start in the new year. At this point, we probably have to just simply expect that we won't adjust rates, we'll just re-up them, and then we'll adjust rates in February or March, a month or 2 or 3, or whatever it is, we need time later than normal. And that's okay, because I think it's better for us to make a good decision rather than hurry to make an artificial timeline. I mean, the idea that rates change on January 1 is totally artificial. There's nothing compelling that.
I don't even know if I'm willing to make a decision in February or March. Let's see how next summer goes. It could rain every other day next summer, and
Well-
the water usage could be way down, and we could put this, I'm not saying to kick the can down the road, but then we're gonna be a lot closer to what you had planned in the first place.
Yeah, and there's nothing, even though we've generally you want to do rates at least every 3rd year, just because you don't want it to go too long before you've given it a good, solid look. But there's nothing that prevents the council from saying, well, let's revisit rates this year, and let's revisit rates next year. Like, especially when you're talking about big budget stuff, and you've got a lot of new components, it's not necessarily the worst idea, especially when it matters so much how much water we're using. That, there's nothing prevents the council from doing that. That's just simply,
My goal here is to lower water rates, but I can see raising water rates on the top tiers. I mean, if we have 1,000 people using 80,000 gallons a month, and there's no way, even if they have 10 people in the house, that they can use that much, and they're overwatering their lawn, it's obvious, then maybe I'd be open to doing something on a higher tier, but.
Yep. yeah. But I mean, either way, that's the other thing too, is with conservation, I mean, you look at this, we got well 4 and the tower, if we, on that right-hand column. The next item, if we hit those goals, the next item is not till 2054. I mean, that's a long way out. That, if we can hit that, if we can make those marks, if rates have to go up, it's probably not gonna be a crushing amount. But if we end up on the left-hand column, it's gonna be a crushing amount, and it's either gonna be we saved up money ahead of time, or we issued bonds, and and the problem is, when you issue bonds, is those rates change a lot overnight. You don't get to step into it, you don't get to be gradual about it, you lose all that flexibility.
You're talking about getting enough money in the pool for 2028 possibly, by then?
Yeah, I mean, for well one, or for well four, if it ends up being in that 1 to 2 million range, we can pull that off. I mean, we've got some money set aside and things like that. I mean, we'll find a way to pull that off. But if it's gonna be, the issue is if we are in the left-hand column and we follow up the well with a tower immediately after by 2030, like, those years make a big difference. I mean, it's a big deal, but we'll run those out. We'll get a well study, and we'll see what those are. But I just want to make sure that council is aware of what is going on here, and what kind of decisions you're going to have to make in the future, and start rolling those things around in your mind.
And what was the average water usage per household in Minnesota? I think we talked about that. Wasn't it like 75 or 80?
I couldn't say
And
for sure.
I think we're like 20 above average or something, if I remember right.
Well, for the discussions I've had with Bolton and Mink, it's about what is the target and what does the DNR want to see you hitting when they're issuing you a permit for a new well.
That was gonna be my question too, what is the main driving force behind moving it up 15 years, ahead of time? I mean, is it just that we're using so much that we're hitting that DNR number? Because when I talked to the guy from the DNR, as long as we were making an attempt to conserve water, it really wasn't something that he was very concerned about, so.
I think that Matt Svester should chime in on that, because it really comes to demand of water
Right,
and
and that's what I'm
having.
wondering, is it
and-
the DNR number that we're worried about, or is it the capacity to actually put the water out?
Getting well number 4 is actually a capacity issue with providing enough water for the population we have now.
Well,
right
but I
now,
mean, we
if you've got-
didn't really even think about this until we had the water tower down, and then we were running off of the wells. Well, then we realized, oh, maybe we have a capacity issue, but if we have the water tower up, do we really have a capacity issue? I mean, that's,
Well, part of the issue here gets to be, and Matt and I have talked about this, so I'll chime in real quick here, is that you have to be able to operate with at least one of your 3 wells down at any given time. And so you've got to do the math on, if I lose my biggest well that can pump out the most, can the remaining 2 keep up? And if they can't, you're subjecting the residents to a measure of risk, and we ought to have a 4th. In order to, because there's some basic services that people just simply expect, and,
oh, absolutely, yeah.
But
But I mean, with
expect
the
water to
water
come out.
tower, I mean, I suppose, yeah.
That ends up being the crux of it, is if we have a well go down, because if we run this out long enough, a well will go down. I mean, you can do all the maintenance, all the planning, and something will happen eventually, over a long enough period of time. Something will happen, and if you lose your number 1 well capacity, the biggest well that can provide the most capacity, and now you don't have enough in the remaining 2, But it wasn't
Then
that
is
many years ago that we would have been fine on our 2 small ones. But things have changed. We've added a
Then
lot of
is the
people.
well actually more important than the water tower moving forward? I mean, is it such a big deal if we put the water tower back to where it was and we just add the well? I mean, but I guess, Matt, if you're,
Well, right now, during the summertime, if we had a well go down, we couldn't keep up.
Right.
We run all 3 wells every day throughout the summer. They might run for 8 or 9 hours a day, but if we're pumping 1.7 million gallons, the tower holds 750,000, so it's turning over, over twice in one day. And the demand is there for the tower. And
you
if we
ever
had our
had-
biggest well go down, that would definitely be a crutch in the system, because they would run 24 hours a day trying to keep up. We probably would not maintain the same pressure that residents are used to.
okay. So then, I mean, is the water tower actually being able to have that capacity in a second tower, is that, I mean, and even that, if we're moving it forward, we're still only talking about 2034, so it's not like we're talking about tomorrow with this, I mean, we're talking about 11 years from now. so.
It's a big deal. Yeah, conservation moves it out quite a bit, helps a lot, yeah.
And didn't you say that having a tower closer to a well, like across the street, would save us a lot of infrastructure money? Wasn't that another reason to add a tower?
No, so what I'm talking about is currently, like, where well 4 is gonna go, the cost of well 4 is going to depend how close it is to our current water treatment plant. If it's 5 miles out of town, you probably just chalk that up to being $5 million just in piping.
Yep.
You know, about $1 million a mile. I mean, that ballpark. So we're hoping that's not the case. Now, there are some sites in town that we already own that are potential candidates, but we're gonna find out if those could work, so. But thinking about, I've got roughly 20 minutes here. This is just, roll it around in your minds, think about it, right? Don't be surprised, that kind of thing. After this then, literally, next meeting, we gotta set a preliminary levy. Remember, preliminary levy, the only thing you are committed to is you cannot go above that. You can come back at December and you can make it lower, but you can't make it higher. So I'm gonna need some direction how we wanna go, and if we say, boy, there's too many things we gotta discuss, then my recommendation is clearly state that you are intentionally setting it higher than you intend it to be. You're setting it artificially high just to buy time, that would be the recommendation. So if there's something specifically that you guys want me to address at that next meeting, we can try to address it and get to a conclusion and a consensus. But absent that at the next meeting, I mean, we have to take action and submit a preliminary levy.
So one thing that I thought would be helpful, and I had texted this to all of you, is to come up with possibly 3 to 5 scenarios, because one thing impacts another thing, so it's really not, Mike's not able to change it in real time if we're just making modifications, certain budgets or certain line items, because it affects other line items. So if there's a consensus of a council to come up with some scenarios, then he can bring back those exact scenarios to the next work session, so you can see how it impacts the whole budget, instead of giving generalized numbers, because everything's kind of interconnected.
The one thing that I had was, we kind of discussed in the last meeting about extending the cop cars to 6-year instead of 5-year. That's something I would like to see how that would potentially play out.
See, let me kind of jump in there. I really think that we can be more creative. I just hate the cut in that area, you know what I mean? I think our residents, if they want lower taxes, but they don't want us to lower them in that spot, would be my assessment on that. So, and I think, I mean, it really is a lot of wear and tear on them when they're sitting there and they're idling and they need to be ready to go, you know? So I think it's, I think we can find money in other spots, but,
Okay.
but I mean, that would be one scenario you're throwing out there though,
Yep.
for sure. So, I mean, but that would be my thought on it, but.
And I have another bigger one that we'll talk about in committee of the whole that is on that agenda that I'd like to discuss, and
If it's gonna be budget related, does it have like, you know, an impact on our next discussion, we should try and get it on the list here so that I've got
I got a page and a half of stuff
Yeah.
here, so you want me to go?
Go for it, yep.
You guys want me to go? Okay. So I mentioned kind of at the last meeting that I think we should do a freeze on Fund 920, and I'd like to see us freeze everything with the exception of the police vehicles. And I think that it looks like we're probably, and the street lighting infill, because I know that was something that we were passionate about. So with the exception of the police vehicles and the street lighting infill, I'd like to see us freeze 920 on everything else. It looks like we're probably obligated for the Cambridge-Isani Bike and Walk Trail and the
Yep.
LETG maintenance. Those are probably things
Yep.
that we've committed ourselves to and we're in contract for, right? So we probably can't do anything about those. But there's some things on there that I think maybe can we cover any of that stuff with park dedication funds? Or is that all things that we couldn't use park dedication funds for? I was thinking like the skate park equipment and archery fencing, playground equipment at Bluebird.
Yeah, it's one of those debatable things, right? It's like if, you know, if you take the skate park out for 12 months and then put back something that's different,
Yeah.
did you just put in new stuff?
and who enforces that? I mean,
I mean, really, what's that?
An audit.
an audit from who on that, though?
Well,
Do
I
you-
don't know that my financial audit would be that, but I think it would be more about, I think the risk would be is that you have developers who have paid into that, who are gonna say, nope, you didn't follow the letter of the law, and not only that, but I don't wanna pay it anymore. I think that would be.
But it's
the
such a
risk there.
gray area, they'd never win. Not never, but for something.
Well, sometimes it's not even about winning, it's just about being a hassle and creating legal costs.
Well,
So-
anyway, those are the those exceptions basically, and then with maybe looking at those things as possible things we could do part dedication funds for, so.
I disagree. I think we need to really consider on that plow truck.
Well, let me finish my stuff, and then you can come with your, because they want 2 or 3 proposals, so let me just run through this real quick, and then you can give them your ideas there, so, if you don't mind. But, then I think we should implement a hiring freeze, you know, unless it's to fill a vacant position that we already have. I think we should, no interns, no seasonal public works. You know, I think we were able to do 20 water meters a day with the guys that we have now, plus we've got our guy that's handling the water treatment plant and everything now. I think we should be able to keep up with the staff that we have. So that would be my second thing, would be the hiring freeze. And then I think we had talked a little bit about the utility billing position. I don't know if we've heard back at all on that. We just had the one price come back so
Yeah,
far?
not getting
Okay.
a lot on that one, and it's pretty remarkable, the price on that.
Yeah, right, yeah, that didn't help us much, so, but that was one thing that I was thinking about, is that, you know, the utility billing position, you guys probably saw that we're accepting that resignation later today, is that could we sub that stuff out, or could we sub payroll out and then move utility billing to another department, or something like that, so that, we're still waiting to hear back, it sounds like on 1 or 2, but we'll see how that goes, I guess, right? So,
The payroll, I got an email
Yeah.
late this afternoon, it was basically the same, 8 grand for the minimum and 13 grand for the full service, and that's per month.
per month, yeah, so we're not even anywhere close there, so we're gonna have to
it's
fill
not
that
even-
position. And you guys interviewed for that, so you're ready to hire now?
We did, and we do have
Okay.
someone that we added to the agenda that's
was one of the
contingent
things we
upon it
added,
being
okay.
approved, but we did add that.
Okay,
Just to keep it moving along. Now, if you want that to be discussed before, we should probably discuss it at committee of the whole or something before the council meeting.
And
no,
what's-
I think it's, yeah, if we got those bids back, we tried, you know, I think anytime we have an opening, we should try to see what we can do to save money, but,
I do have information also added to council talking about building department, so we'll be discussing that a little bit
Okay.
tonight.
okay. What were
What was the pay on that position? Roughly, was it?
Roughly around $24, I think, but
Okay.
that was, I can see what the starting is right here. Let's see.
Okay, so it's half as much.
For you,
Yeah,
for UB or what?
UB wage?
I think the last clerk was at 27, 28? And we're gonna be hiring below that, so.
It starts at $23.32 an hour as the step 1, and step 9 goes up to $29.52.
Okay, so with benefits, it's probably like roughly 80 a year starting. Cost to the city.
Yeah, I think that's probably close. I was probably gonna guess 76, but that.
Okay.
yeah, that's
I think 76 is what it was.
Okay.
Yeah, we talked about that the other day, I think you're 76 or something.
And is that person
It's
full-time?
$57,614 was the wage for this year.
Is that person really kept
Not
busy
counting benefits,
full-time?
though.
Or
Not
can they,
counting benefits.
can they do other stuff too, or is that really a full-time, they have to be doing that full-time? Or can it be spread, can they do other things to,
Well, we do fill in periodically with other stuff.
Okay.
I mean, because anytime, I mean, finance is always a little bit of this all the
Right.
time. And it's mostly about making sure you're reorganizing your, make sure that you're actually reorganizing your to-do list and finding those most urgent things first.
okay,
But yeah, doing that position currently, in addition, it's, especially with the meter project, it's kind of a lot.
sure.
Yeah.
And the next thing on my list was, I think that the liquor store profits right now that are above and beyond, because we're transferring 450 a year, I think, right now, right?
Right,
So-
the current 2024 budget, I went back to.
Yep.
The standard 350 is what it had been.
Okay, so that's
So I understood our changes in December last year to be
one time.
a one-time thing.
Okay,
So
gotcha. Okay, so right now we're transferring 350, but we've got an extra 280.
if the actual cash change as budgeted is 283,000.
Right,
That's sitting on the table, it's on the sideline, so to speak.
Right, and we've got some from last year then, too.
What's that?
We've got some other from last year that would also be sitting on the sidelines, too, right? That's,
Yeah, I mean, we have to keep, I mean, we really need to make sure we're trying to keep a fair amount in there, because you've always got to be able to have cash
Well,
to
right,
cover
yeah,
inventory,
yeah, I
and,
mean, you gotta
and
have something,
inventory purchases tend to do this. We'll purchase generally a lot in November, and then maybe not so much in February, and it kind of, yeah. So we got to be sure we're covering those high points and we actually have cash.
and the reason that we're keeping a high balance in there is also because our goal was to pay off at the earliest call date, which was December 15th of 2029, I think. And really, when you look at that, though, and we've had conversations before even about the water treatment plant, where it's like, well, if you have, you know, residents that are paying for it now, and then they're also, you know, paying for it in the future, you know, I think the residents now are the ones that took the risk and should get the profits. So, you know, by paying it off that 7 years early, so like the latest payoff is 2036. So you're talking about paying it off 7 years early, but you're only saving $18,000 a year in interest, which from 2029 to 2036, where we could be taking that money and using it to build our fund balance now, and additionally to lower taxes. So that's what I would like to see as the next thing on that list would be to say, okay, instead of trying to pay that off early, we keep those additional profits and use it to, you know, build our fund balance to that 50% and to potentially lower taxes. So, and then the new Public Works building, I'd like to see us push that out probably 15 to 20 years, you know, kind of depending on, you know, and the thing is too, is that we'd have to really look probably at what we were expecting to purchase during that time that's gonna be able to fit. But I think we should be sharing that space at PD until that time. And I think that we've talked about that before, that might free up about $100,000 a year if we're able to push that past the inflection point, I think it was, so.
Mayor, for clarification, does that include the salt shed, or are you talking just
I
the
would say
facility?
include the salt shed, but I mean, I'd be willing to look at another option of maybe doing a shed or a dome or a barn or something for,
I think they need that
you
salt
know, I
shed.
don't know that it needs to be the great Taj Mahal of salt sheds, but I mean, I think I wouldn't be opposed to looking at another option that may be a little cheaper than building a fancy salt shed, but.
Okay, thank you.
But I think maybe two options there, you know, if we wait on the salt shed, or if we move forward with that, but push the building back.
I'd rather see the salt shed done ASAP personally.
Yeah,
'cause
well,
there's a lot of
let's take
waste and
a
time, yeah.
two approach there.
Yeah, the difference in price there is, you know, you're talking maybe I forget, maybe 200 grand or something for
Yeah.
the salt shed, but then the building is, you know, 2.5.
Okay, yeah.
You
so
know,
maybe the-
2.5, so there's a, you know, it's a
Yeah, so the
10 to
building
1,
is the big
10 to
part
1,
of it,
12 to
yeah.
1 scale difference between
Sure.
those two projects, so.
Okay. Let's see, some other things that I had on here, you know, I know we had talked about the agenda management platform and you know, it's nice to have. Steve, you don't like it. You know, you've said that in the past, but if we were to take that out, that's $3,500 there. I'd look at that. Governmentjobs.com, I think remind me again, I know I had written that one down and I was trying to remember exactly what that is, for. I know that Katie uses it.
Yeah, that's
and
basically
it's-
the hiring platform.
And what is the main, it's just a hiring platform.
Yeah,
So
be
do we
able
use
to-
like Indeed and that kind of thing?
we can
as
post, they
well,
can
or-
apply, you can process them, you can do all that stuff in
Yeah,
one spot, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, so maybe that one's hard to get rid of then. So let's skip that one. But we talked about not paying the Fund 438 in full. That would free up 75,000 there.
Yeah, and so everybody else knows, Fund 438 is old construction fund, so 400 class funds are construction funds. Fund 438 paid for the parking lot, basically, all back here. And at the end of the project, it was short $75,000. And there was no plan on that. And absent a plan, the general fund is de facto responsible. And so at some point, the general fund will need to cover that money. There's no obligation that it be in 2024 or whatever, but in the end, that is where that money is required to come from. So we could move, yes, we can move that around, 438 transfer, yep.
I've got two more things here, so.
Like, how much was in there?
75.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually slightly less than 75, but yeah, it's,
So, let's see, this question here. Do you think that the LGA funds will be that 200,000 additional every year going forward, or do you think that
that's a
is-
new level, yes.
That's the new level, so we can.
Yeah,
plan on
and now you would be adjusting from that up.
Okay,
Yep.
all right. So that was kind of a thought there, and, you know, what would we have done if we didn't have that 200, because in the original budget that you sent us, I mean, we're looking at basically keeping the rate the same
Yep.
in that, which would, you know, it sounds like we're
Well-
gonna take a different approach, but what would we have done without those LGA
Well,
funds?
the first thing I would have done is I would have canceled I wouldn't have included a transfer from 101 to 438. That would have been the first, that would have
Right,
been
so
the,
there's your
that is
75 there,
that's
yeah.
the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that you know, it's already been sitting out there negative since 2014.
So it's not like,
something like that.
no rush.
It's already been 8, 10 years, whatever.
you're basically just moving it around and it's,
But
yeah.
the council should know, in the end, it is de facto the obligation of the general fund to make that fund whole, so.
Okay. All right, well, that was just more of a question there, I guess. And then the last thing, it doesn't sound like we're gonna probably realize a ton of savings on the duty crew changes, just because of the amount of fires that we've had this year for the fire department, so I don't know that was on the list here that I had, but I, after kind of talking with some more people, it didn't sound like we would have spent more had we not made the change, so we did save money, but because of the way the calls came in this year, it's gonna end up being a little bit of a savings, but not much, so.
But it just grows and grows and grows.
Well,
I mean, we've had a dry year, so the fires superseded that,
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
And we'll,
But we saved what we would have spent otherwise, though, so.
and we'll also find out how good I am at predicting insurance renewal rates. Now, but we won't have that before the preliminary levy needs to be set. So, yeah, if we have great renewal on workers' comp or health insurance or something like that, that can save, you can pick up 10, 20, 30, 40 grand pretty quick, but depends.
And then let me just kind of say too, that, I mean, when I'm talking about these things, I mean, I think that's kind of a once-in-a-generation sort of a freeze on the hiring and the 920 fund, because you can't do that, obviously, every year, because otherwise you're in the same boat as you were before you had a plan, right? So, so I'm not advocating that we say, okay, well, every year we're just gonna say, we're not gonna do this, we're not gonna do that, but I think you can get away with it on a one-time basis, I think, where you're gonna actually realize that amount of savings, and I think I'm not saying we should take all of it this year, I think we should take it over, I mean, use your best judgment on that when we're looking at a plan, but I mean, I think we could take it.
And it is
over
worth
the
noting,
course
the plan that we have right now, we are still in that catch-up phase, right? There was a number of years where we really were not.
Well, street improvements.
Street improvements too, but even Fund 920, we didn't have a Fund 920, we didn't have a plan, right? Everybody just showed up with, here's the stack of paper, here's the stuff I want. Ask for 3, hope to get 1. That was the approach,
Want
which,
to avoid that. So, I mean, I
that's a
don't-
terrible incentive structure. And when you look at that capital plan, and it's it's in the packets, and you go down to the bottom of the line, and you see that running balance, right? It says, here's the net effect on cash for this year, but here's your running cash balance as projected. When you get out to about 27, 28, I want to say, off the top of my head, I want to say about 27, 28, 27, 28, you see that in those prior years, from like 19 to 28, we kind of just hover back and forth around 0. Like some years we're a little bit negative, some years we maybe get up a little bit, and it just kind of does this. Once we get to that point, if about 2027, 2028, somewhere in there, I forget what the exact year, you can understand that we have caught up because something curious starts to happen. Even though I'm only adjusting the levy based on inflation, and it's all relative, right? All the revenues and all the expenditures all just go together with inflation. If inflation is higher or lower, it ends up being the same relative deal. We go from hovering around 0, and you get to that like 2028 range, and all of a sudden, if you watch that cash value, and especially if you come and look at the Excel sheet, and you get out there, it just goes up, 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 up. Problem is, you gotta get there with cash. But once you're there, that council in 2028 or 9 or whatever it was, is gonna have an opportunity to reset that levy and change that trajectory on those future cash balances. And when I say reset that levy, that would mean downward, and still be able to cover those recurring things. So, that's,
Which we can kind of move ahead in time by doing some of these things here.
but we gotta,
But
be
we gotta be wise
cognizant of
about
that.
it,
So
yeah,
if we do
right, yeah.
if we do the freeze, that will move out. That inflection point is
Oh, I
still
see what you're
there.
s- yeah, right.
That inflection point is still there. It moves out de facto 1 year, but to the extent that we can get there, there's some additional money to be had there, but we gotta get there,
I think that'd be pretty hard to say to freeze all of it, I think, because there's some things that are essential and needing to be replaced. And I don't, I think it'd be really hard to say freeze all of it, but I think there are
Well, I mean,
probably some
I
things.
pulled out the exceptions that I thought
Well,
we
right, but
could
I think
freeze,
Public
too.
Works does need their grader. I think there's things that we do actually for sure need,
Yeah, I
but
mean, that's my plan. I mean,
Yeah,
you
right.
guys go ahead and
Well,
take the rest of it.
And when I
you know,
bring up
but-
those scenarios, I'm not gonna just show up with, here's the dollars and cents. I mean, I'll inform those things, right? Like, hey, we've got this planned and this planned and this plan, and if we freeze 1 year, we're out this long, and we're waiting this long for plows. Now, this 15 or 20-year useful life is now gonna be a de facto 25, even though we only skipped 1 year. So I'll make council aware of
Let me
those
just
things.
remind everybody, though, when we had the conversation the other day, and we said, what will it take to actually get us to really,
Right.
if your value of your house stayed the same and we can actually lower it, we're talking 347,000 we gotta cut out of the budget that was originally presented. So I think the plan that I'm putting forward is gonna get us to that number and maybe potentially a little bit more, and it's gonna help us build fund balance. So, so that's what I got. But-
I think that, first of all, I think Matt needs that plow truck. I think that's bottom dollar. I mean, Public Works needs that. I'm gonna tell you what, you think you got one resident that's complaining about, my taxes are gone up. Wait till that snow comes out and the truck's broke down and they can't get the street plowed. He'll have 9 million calls. And it ain't gonna just be from residents. There are gonna be people that traveling through here, whatever. It's inevitable. I will say, I have never been a fan of the grader. Matt knows this also, but I'll tell you something. When I watched him go down Main Street and run that grader down Main Street and scrape that ice off of there, I'm telling you, in the last, I don't know, Dan, how many, since we've had really a bad plowing, but I'm thinking the last, 5, 6 years, people have raved of how great these streets are.
The grader is,
And it's huge.
irreplaceable. Once you get
Replaceable when it
hard
comes
packed
to
or ice,
that.
Nothing peels it down to the asphalt like that grader.
Also, I've gone into cities that are 10 times bigger than the city of Isani, and their streets are horrid, even now, in the summer, rougher than a corn cob. I think Mr. Sylvester takes,
So I'm going to interrupt. So Mike is going to head out. I'm going to continue to take notes.
yep,
Yes,
yep.
yep.
Thanks,
Careful
Mike.
on the ice.
Mr. Sylvester has done a fabulous job on taking care of our streets and taking care of everything with Public Works. So I think, when you want to freeze on summer helpers or, these kind of guys, that hurts from him taking care of other things. When their crew can't go out and do the jobs that they have to do, where they're going out and having to do mowing the grass, where they should be taking care of water issues or sewer issue or backing, I think that's a huge asset that really doesn't cost us a ton of money. That summer helper probably pays for 4 guys working.
Did he have a summer helper this year?
Yes.
Well, then he would have one next year. We're just freezing what we have right now.
No, I mean, I was saying,
I think
I was proposing freezing it all, but my point was is that we had time to do 20 water meters a day for a lot of the year. Well, I mean, seasonal stuff, I get why it's seasonal, because it's busier that time of year, right? So, you can make the argument there too, but.
But it wasn't just seasonal guys doing it. That was
No,
the
it
water
was,
guys
it was our
doing it.
main guys, it
So-
was our main
So the
guys doing it.
seasonal guys were going out doing what they would
Right.
have been doing
But
otherwise.
we've also hired our, I can never remember the name of that position. Will you
Utility
help me?
manager.
Utility manager position, who's now full-time and just on the water, which is Jim doing that now. So that was my only point with that, is that I think we could still get the stuff done that we need to get done. And in the summertime, if the grass gets left for an extra day or two, is that the end of the world? I don't know that it is, so.
I do want to add that Matt and I did have a discussion about, we did have a water sewer intern that took up about $10,000 within this budget, and he was utilized to do those meter changeouts, and we did discuss that we are fine not filling that next year. I think that there should be some additional conversations about the seasonals, if we are going to keep the compost manned or not. That could be a continued discussion on maybe lowering the number of seasonals if we didn't staff the compost site. But we did have the discussion about the water intern to not return, as we don't have that meter project next year.
And I would,
I just still think that seasonal help at Public Works is huge.
Oh, yeah.
It takes a lot of workload off the other guys that are full-time employees.
Because there's a lot of stuff that those guys need to be doing that requires operating equipment that summer help can't operate. So,
I guess, for me, living in this town for so long, I think there's been I've heard a lot of people say that, I don't mean to take this out on Matt or any of the Public Works employees, but a lot of people say that you can tell who works for the city because they're just standing there with a shovel. and
I
I think
don't, and I don't think that
I
at
don't think
all.
that's necessarily
I think our
true.
guys in public works
That's,
are.
that's
really-
kind of a running story.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think those guys, and don't get me wrong, I think they could stay busy all the time, nonstop. There's always something to do. I mean, that's not at all what I'm trying to imply, that they're standing
Right,
around
right, that's-
leaning on shovels, because they are not. They're good guys, they're hardworking guys, and I think the world of them, but
I would just be curious to see what would happen if we didn't. I mean, I think it's a good, hardworking group of guys, and I think they can handle it, what they have, without all the extra help, and it'd just be interesting to see, you know? And it's something that I think it's worth trying for the residents, because residents do have that stigma on the public works. It doesn't mean it's necessarily true, but I'd be curious to see if it helps, if it's impossible.
There's a
It's,
stigma with every profession.
oh, right, of course, yeah,
So I wouldn't even use that as an excuse. You bringing it up actually is insulting to
okay,
anybody in the public works field. Very insulting.
okay.
I just think that's,
You talk to my back doctor, or my rheumatoid arthritis doctor, and you ask him how much shovel leaning I do.
Well, I wasn't trying to attack anybody, I'm just saying I mean, we're trying to look at budgets here, right? And budgets everything costs money. You know, we're trying to be as efficient as we can for our citizens, so I think it's worth looking into stuff like that.
but then.
and
It's
my
not saying
point
we're not
only-
attacking anybody, we're just talking about
yeah.
potential ideas.
no, and my point only is that,
Cutting
that
the
we've
public
got, it's like a
works is
list of things to
attacking
do at your
them.
house, right? I mean, the list of things is there. It'd be nice to have it done all at the same time and cross it all off, but I mean, if it waits a week or two, or, you know, there's certain things obviously that doesn't fall into, but there's some things that probably do, so that's
Mayor
all
and
I'm
Council,
saying.
if you don't mind me, I kind of made a
Yeah.
short list, and I'll name a couple of things that Public Works was able to do because we have the seasonals. Some of those things are the sledding hill, illuminate Isani, the VFW park removal, concrete padding in the parks, concrete for pads for the generators and all the lift stations that we did. There's a lot of big projects, the water treatment plant, or the filter under drain at the wastewater plant, that was like a big project. That was like an all-day, all-summer thing. That wasn't something that was above and beyond our normal everyday stuff that's just regular summer stuff that we do with it, maintaining parks and, you know, water and wastewater and irrigation repairs and lift station maintenance and community garden stuff. The list goes on and on of stuff that we do because we have the seasonals there and gives us the option. We mow about 80 hours a week is what it takes us to mow everything we mow right now. That's 2 seasonals, primarily mowing 30 hours a week, and we still have to use a full-time guy to fill in for some extra mowing because they're only there 30 hours a week apiece. So far, year to date, we have spent $14,188 on our seasonals to date right now.
That's a hell of a lot cheaper than a full-time employee. And that's why I don't see it, that's really a big savings. And when all of a sudden your full-time employees are getting burned out, or they're sick of things, you start losing that person, they quit, they move on. Now you're looking for somebody to replace that person. I think that's a small dollar amount that really isn't, that's just scratching the surface. I mean, I think, yeah, there's things that probably can be gone without, not necessarily needs to be done. I'm not gonna sit there and argue that they had to be done, but I think seasonal help is a huge thing, at least for Public Works. And I don't think, Ms. Wood, is there other seasonal help that this city hires other than Public Works?
So we do usually have a parks intern. This year, the parks intern was /seasonal for Public Works. We shared that person. We have an admin intern, community development / economic development intern, and then we had the water wastewater intern for seasonal positions.
These are all things that impact.
And I
The city
think that when we
operations.
look at, like I said, we did discuss about the water wastewater one, that would be 10,000 savings only in water and wastewater, 5,000 apiece. Not hiring the admin intern, I think that is definitely doable. We use them for backfill projects, things that could be pushed out, to be honest. We do have the parks intern that does a lot because we've added events, particularly Illuminate Isani. That person also helps with weeding the community garden, which is part of, again, a shared thing between Public Works Seasonal and them. Now, we can call upon our gardeners to do more. The problem is we just haven't been able to get them to put in that extra time of weeding like the paths and stuff, and then the rain garden. To be honest, I haven't had a discussion with Stephanie about not filling that intern. We have gotten a grant to help fulfill some of the funds that we get for that intern. But that's possibly something that we didn't have to have, but we kind of used that person to fill in for not hiring a part-time person when we combined the community development and economic development together. But again, we would just need to relook at things, the projects, and reprioritize. And some things don't have to get done. It's just a matter of which things.
Hey, Matt, do you know how much overtime you guys had in last winter?
Last winter? Oh, I'm not sure. I don't have that number. It was a lot, obviously, with the winter that we had. You know, and a lot of guys use that time that the overtime and winter time, that's their comp time that they use in the summertime to offset not being able to take the time off in the wintertime. So a lot of guys are 410s in the summertime, they'll take an extra day to make it a longer weekend and do something because they're really tied down in the winter time to here to plow snow. I will say too, that plow truck that's on there to get replaced next year has been on order for 3 years. Because of COVID, it couldn't get it in 1 year, couldn't get it in 2 years, and it didn't get built this year, and we'll get it next spring sometime, and it'll be a 2025 instead of a 2022.
I think, if you look in there, our building official has resigned. And if any of you know me, I've been dead set against always having a private company do that like we did with Minspec. Minspec was a nightmare. But the company that's been filling in for Matt when he has been on vacation or he's got more work than he can handle, Rum River, I have dealt with them guys numerous times in numerous different cities. They are very good. We've never had a single complaint with them. That would we would eliminate that position and permits would be paying for that, so it's not like it's a budgeted item anymore. So we're no longer gonna have that. With the turn of the economy, we do not know what's gonna happen. We could drop down to 0 permits next year. Right. And with that
In some
fact,
cities, we've seen a slight slowdown, but some cities, they've seen.
yep, there's
they're
cities that
at a
haven't had a
standstill.
single permit.
Yeah.
So with that position being eliminated, I think I talked to Ms. Wood about the permit tech that we have. I don't know if we would still need to have that person or not. The staff would be more known on that than I would. So, obviously, we've lost that position. Normally I would say I'd rather see us have our own inspector, but
With the economy.
with the economy the way it is right now, we can always, if it does pick up and we need to go to that, you two gentlemen weren't here for this, but there was times they were right now to check for more than what we paid our inspector. 1 quarter. We paid them in 1 quarter what we paid Matt full-time.
Yep, I remember, yep. That was
That's a
crazy.
lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
We can't make money on permits, so it's not like it's, we paid his wages out of the permit fees, but, that was a budgeted item as a salary plus benefits and everything else. So I think at this point, I'm not objective to hiring somebody like Rum River. I just don't wanna see us have Minspec come in and say, well, we're gonna do it, less than Rum River. I'll tell you what, we had way too many problems with Minspec, way too many.
And we will, council, be discussing building services a little bit later this evening at the city council meeting, just because we do have to make a change from the current contract that we have anyway, so that will be added. But just to recap, I have Mayor Gordon's list of items. I have Councilmember Lindine's list of items, a little bit with some other information from others added in about keeping the grader, keeping the plow, but still reducing some of the capital improvement items, and then looking out at contracting services. And then also keeping seasonals. Is there anything else for scenarios? Because what staff will do is myself and Mike will meet together, put together pros and cons, if we don't have this, what it does, what it does for the budget, but also for staff time, because we don't want to reduce here, but then build up over here. So we'll try to do that pro and con list with the items as well, as showing how it impacts the budget. Any other items?
The salt shed, I'm just curious what the style
I
salt
think
shed.
they were gonna give us kind of 2 scenarios on that.
What style salt shed? Were you looking at the canvas
I
style like the states use? The state
It'd be
department?
something like that, yeah, that would be something like that.
Yeah, those are,
And I don't know, I
Pretty
haven't talked to
maintenance-free
Jason
and
to find
much
exactly what it was, but I
cheaper.
know we've talked about it.
yeah.
Yeah.
part of the cost in putting that salt shed in too, and I think there was the estimate was inclusive of doing some grading and some earthwork, because we're gonna take down some of them pine trees and put it in that nook, not exactly where the current salt shed is, so there's some earth costs in there too.
Benefit to have that extra space, so is, because you're buying in bulk. There's been times where, I'm sure you've experienced it, you buy it at the beginning of the season, then you need some through mid-season. Oh, there's a shortage, because we didn't have enough to buy it up front, because we didn't have the space to put it,
Yep, I agree.
so.
Our salt shed too, it's not ideal, it's not a salt shed like normal cities have as a salt shed. It was an afterthought when we got that salt shed. Some of you may know, some of you won't know, but years ago, the salt shed came into play because during the winter, we would drive up to the county and fill up with salt sand when we needed it. We had no place to put it. And then one spring, the county came back and they said, you know what? You're gonna have to build a salt shed because we're not gonna load your trucks when you need salt sand up there. So then we built that salt shed and it was an afterthought. It was like, hey, we gotta get something, and we need it this summer. And that's how that salt shed came into play. It'd be nice to leave it full of salt all the time. We put a tarp in front of it because it lose a lot of salt through the rain, and it just runs down the curb. When you get good hard rain, it just melts the salt out, and down the curb it goes. So,
Yep, that's one thing I think is essential for them after seeing it. And then we had talked about potentially keeping it and being able to store stuff under it for as long as it lasts, the next few years or whatever too. I think that's something that we should have in there personally. But,
Yeah, I think they were gonna give us two
Yeah,
options
right,
on that, and I'm not opposed, I agree with you there, that I could be talked into that, so. And if you have the extra space and you can use it to store other stuff, if we're waiting on the building, then I think that would be good too. So.
I personally think that, Matt does a very great job figuring, saying, hey, I really don't need to have this. We can do without it, but I really need this. I think Travis does the same thing. You don't remember this. Dan remembers this. We used to have a chief that came in and said, hey, I need 3 squad cars. Didn't need 3, he needed 1, but he had to ask for 3 to get 1. Travis was around when that happened. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. He's not playing that game. I think for the most part, staff does a pretty good job of cutting unnecessary things. I mean, I think we all would like shiny new things, but, Mayor Gordon knows this, with the fire district, there was a lot of times that we were doing a 1976 fire truck was going out on calls, and you didn't know if that truck was gonna make it or not. The fire department got lucky for many years in not having those issues. I think public safety is a big concern, and I don't think any resident in this town wants to see any of that cut.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, that's why I excluded it from what I was.
And that, to me, Public Works with the plow truck and everything, that goes along with public safety. Because I think that, if our streets are horrible, that's just adding more and more problems to everything.
And the price jump on plow trucks from one year to the next, we're not talking 5,000, 6,000. We're talking 20 to 40,000. So it's.
And I think that grader, as another grader, is.
Wait time.
We're getting something a lot better than we have. That's gonna last us for a while. It's not like the grader, we have to go out and buy the best and the brand newest grader. It's, from what I understand, it's coming from another city and is willing to part with theirs while they're gonna upgrade theirs. So that might be a deal where if we don't buy it, we lose it, and next thing you know, when we do definitely have to replace that grader, it's gonna cost us 10 times that. That's a problem. And I'm telling you, truthfully, honestly, I've always thought we needed to get rid of it until I seen what it did on going down the streets, scraping that ice.
Mayor and Council, if I could interrupt, if there are any other items real quick, otherwise we will be coming up to our timeline here to end this meeting and then start planning commission. Any other scenarios of things you'd like to see? Do you have any?
I didn't catch that last part.
Do you have any other items or scenarios that you'd like us to see?
Not at the moment. I might text you with something, but I'm good.
same.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
So, should motion to adjourn?
Yeah, yep, I was
I'm
gonna
gonna
say.
say motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion to adjourn from Councilman Lundin and a second from Councilman Merrill. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. We are adjourned.